Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Brian Vaughn VA back at it again with another juicy one that I think all of you will like. DMs, what is one of the dumbest things a player has rolled for and succeeded? Part 1. A little background. One of the party's first missions was to save a halfling man from the dungeon in the starting town, which was taken over by an orc tribe. They of course took this to the next level, starting an uprising against the orcs with the townsfolk first, which led to them only finishing this when they finished the starting town, ridding it of orcs. After a celebration, the ranger escaped in the night. Player left, we miss him dearly. And the party decided to hunt him down the next day, following clues from a note he left behind, saying he was going home by way of Seaside, the port city I so creatively named. The first thing they find when leaving the city is the halfling man they saved and a friend fishing. Of course, the party questioned him to get a lead on where the ranger went. He was not a good liar and obviously knew what direction he went, but wasn't going to tell, as he had been paid not to by the ranger. He was apologetic about it and everything, yet what my barbarian did next was just cruel. She picked him up and started shaking him, rolled poorly on intimidation, and then said, "I want to toss him into the pond." I had her roll strength, nat 20. The nicest, most apologetic, goofy halfling guy who honestly really liked the party was thrown like a rock that skipped over the water before sinking. She has since tossed 3 more halflings and refers to tossing the halfling as an innuendo. I like that. Not the DM, but the player who caused the roll. We were fighting a boss in a dungeon and a dragon turtle flanked us and broke the bridge we took to enter the room. Our wizard was on the bridge launching spells into the room when the dragon turtle broke through it. It made its bite attacks against him and drowned him in a single round. Our wizard was now unconscious and still hanging out of the dragon turtle's mouth. Our druid tried to pull him out of its mouth, but failed the strength check. At this point, it seemed like our wizard would be killed by the turtle and had no chance of escaping this fate. In a last attempt to find some way to keep him from being eaten, I asked, "How does he taste?" Our DM then had the wizard player roll percentile to see how good he tasted. He rolled a 99. The DM told us he tasted pretty damn good. Luckily for him, the turtle was more interested in killing our party and spit him out so it could try to use its breath on the rest of us. A player got his fingers cut off when he decided to try and assassinate his arch nemesis, and they decided because one of the party had medical proficiency and doctor in his name that he could reattach his fingers. They refused to move until they got them back on, and they didn't get a single roll below a 19 for the whole procedure. And I made it brutal. They just kept rolling higher. Eventually, I relented, but now his fingers hurt horribly each time he uses the hand. No time for character development, oh no, but 1 hour table time for finger surgery in a world with no knowledge of nerve endings or anesthesia. That's actually really cool. I have a player who can shapeshift between his dog form and his human form. One day while they're camping and preparing to go into a tomb, the dog player thought, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if my dog instincts kicked in for this druid in mastiff form?" and attempted to have nature take its course. He said he'll approach without the druid noticing, rolled a 2 for a grand total of 5. The druid noticed him approaching with ill intent and turned back into a dwarf. He rolled a perception check and rolled 1 to notice the transformation and went for the leg. Then, he rolled a nat 20 constitution check and dragged the interaction to uncomfortable proportions. He got whacked on the nose a bunch by the druid, but we didn't care as we were laughing our asses off for 5 minutes. I have a list of these, but I will say the 2 at the top of said list. So I was the DM running hot DQ for a group of mostly beginners, but the most important characters in this are the half-orc barbarian, who is the half-brother of the half-elf sorcerer, that's a lot of halves, and then the human wizard. There was also a warlock and a fighter, but they didn't do anything that would get them put in this story. Barbarian asks the sorcerer for his dagger, then tells me that he wants to throw it at the dragon. I said sure, despite the dragon being more than 60 feet away, which I had mentioned quite a few times. Guess who no longer had a dagger? The second story happens later on in the campaign. They were all tracking the dragon cultists and got attacked from 20 feet up. The barbarian, wizard, and sorcerer whispered to each other.
"I roll to throw the sorcerer up the hill,"
the barbarian said in a calm voice. You roll strength? Sorcerer roll either dexterity or acrobatics. The barbarian succeeded. The sorcerer failed.
"I would like to throw the wizard up,"
the barbarian said on his next turn. I told him what type of checks to do. The barbarian succeeded, wizard failed. The sorcerer had both legs broken, but the wizard broke an arm and a leg. I let their injuries heal between sessions just so they wouldn't need to be carried around a bandit camp full of bandits the whole session. How many whetstones I could sell. For a background, it was my first adventure ever, and during summer vacation, as I was basically brain dead at the time, I said I wouldn't buy one whetstone, I would buy 100 whetstones to make one gold piece, and just give the townspeople some free whetstones. The entire party thought this was the single funniest thing in all their lives. All I was trying to do was escape a little math, and tried to convince the DM into letting them start a business. Of course, he said no, as he had spent months making the adventure we were playing. As soon as we entered a town, however, I thought that a business would be amazing, so I bought another 100 whetstones or so and sprayed them with perfume to sell them for 1 silver piece each. Then the DM made me roll for how many I sold. It was 50, by the way. TLDR, I made a whetstone business. My friend plays as a blind dragonborn monk, and he was stuck on the other side of a gorge with friend number 2, who is a Lothika bard. I think I said that wrong, I apologize. Taking the rope and trying to climb down with friend 2 on her back, the rope snaps. Using his straight-up hands to dig into the wall and slide down the sheetrock face as his only option. I told him to roll for it. He rolls a 12, being able to save both him and friend 2's character from being unharmed, as they were both level 2 and could have easily been killed by a fall that large. Not DM, but one of the players. So we are currently playing Storm King's Thunder. We are in Nightstone right now. We had just gotten through the bandits by seducing their leader. Then a group of orcs manages to get into the city with elves chasing them. We are only level 2 at this point. Our party is a male half-orc fighter, a female tiefling bard, a female tiefling wizard, and a female Aasimar cleric. So we were apparently supposed to be outnumbered by the orcs, and the elves were supposed to save us. But our bard knew the sleep spell. So we cast sleep on the orcs, and our party plugged our own ears. The DM allowed this because he never expected us to actually succeed on that. Well, the bard got the highest rolls she could possibly get. Everyone not part of the party fell asleep. Then the rest of the party dragged the orcs into a small area. Now the DM didn't fully read my character sheet well enough. He thought I was a typical cleric and that I didn't have AoE spells. Normally, I wouldn't as a cleric, but I was a cleric of light. I had a few fire spells that the orcs had no way of saving against, and they were AoE spells too. So cue me and the wizard unleashing AoE spells and killing basically all the orcs. Our DM was dumbfounded. We honestly were not supposed to be able to do that. We were against about 20 orcs. By all accounts, we should have been down, but due to a simple sleep spell, we defeated them. Not the DM for this particular venture, but the player who caused it. The party was fighting a vampire and it was actually doing really well after a night of subpar rolls, until the vampire decided to flee by turning into mist. We didn't have a way to stop him, so our cleric attempted divine intervention to stop him, but that failed. So I asked the DM if I could use the cleric as a phone line to talk to their god and try to get a second shot at intervention. The DM thought the idea of my hot-headed sorcerer yelling at a god through one of his followers was vaguely amusing, and said he'd allow it if I got a nat 20. You all know where this is going. He rolled a nat 20. I wish I could say it helped, but the second divine intervention roll failed as well, and the vampire did escape that day. We killed him several sessions later. But this lunacy gave birth to the feat simply known as Yell at God, where my sorcerer can give a cleric a second chance at divine intervention with a harder DC if he passes a DC 20 Arcana check. And yes, this is always interpreted as the sorcerer yelling at gods using their followers as mediums, leaving the gods so utterly baffled that they just go along with it. A player shoved the local king off a balcony because the big bad evil guy needed his blood for a ritual. The king grabbed a rope and the player was now surrounded by angry guards. So the player climbed down to the king and attempted to convince him that he was trying to help him escape the city before it was overrun with the BBEG's minions. One successful persuasion check later, the player was back in the king's good graces. I usually roll to swear. If I roll a nat 20, I will get a blessing from the gods, though I've only rolled that once. If I roll very low, my character will mutter, "My mom is ugly." "No, wait! It's your mom who is ugly. My mom is not that ugly." Or, "Well, you're too stupid then." My character speaks 6 languages so I can fit my swearing to the PCs and NPCs around me. I accidentally offended quite a lot, especially when I got bad rolls. I usually roll to swear like 5 times a session. Second comment here, but I just remembered the time I killed a red dragon with orc testicles. Follow me on this. Alright, take me on this journey, Captain. So we were playing a one-shot, and as you do in one-shots in a low-rope playing group, you have to behave like a total psychopath. Somewhere along eating a whole cart of turnips and killing an old lady with a giant beer mug, I acquired a pair of orc testicles. Later, once we encountered the boss, an ancient red dragon, I hatched a plan. Lobbing the testicles into its mouth and casting Enlarge, I used the testicles to choke that thing out. What? It somehow failed most of its con saves, and even if he spat them out, I shoved them right back in. Towards the end of the fight, he was begging us to stop, asking us to please just leave him alone, even saying he would give us the kidnapped princess if we stopped. He died with those balls in his mouth. Obligatory, not the DM, we get a lot of those, but I was in a one-shot with a couple of friends. One of our party members wanted to try his hand at DMing, so he created a world where we were mercenary/bounty hunters hired by a prison to track down some escaped convicts. We found their camp and infiltrated it, rather our fighter named Street vaulted the 8-foot wall and opened the door for us. That's a whole nother story though. Once there were 3 guys left, Street starts walking up to the second in command, a tabaxi named Baxter, and starts telling him to surrender. When the tabaxi refuses, Street swings his axe and asks again. This happens 3 times before Baxter surrenders, but his friend is still fighting. Street says to order him to stop fighting, to which Baxter spits in his face. In an amazing feat of strength, Street then hurls the tabaxi through the air and into the other guy and knocks them both clean out. Street also tried this later on a rich aristocrat we rescued from that camp who wouldn't stop insulting us. A lower roll meant that the tabaxi, instead of hitting the aristocrat, just got pelted against a wall and knocked out again. It was really great imagining a 6-foot-tall catman flying through the air while yelling, "Stop throwing me!" So I'm running the campaign Rise of the Drow, a custom campaign funded on Kickstarter, and my group is pretty interesting. One of my players is a half-elf rogue from a wealthy elven noble family. He's a friendly enough guy, even if he's a bit of a space case, who is pursuing a relationship with one of our other characters, a tiefling cleric from a merchant family. Now, for a bit of backstory, our tiefling has a picture of what she looks like, only she doesn't really look like that because she didn't have full plate armor in the game. So they want to give her full plate armor, which is 1,500 gold pieces and way out of her price range. So our rogue comes up with a crazy plan. He's going to ask the merchant if he can give him an IOU for 1,500 gold. He wants to send a message to his family, who again are wealthy nobles and can afford that much gold, and have them send it to the merchant. I'm the DM, so I don't have to let him try this, of course, but I figure, why not? I give it a DC of 18 and say that he has to roll high on a persuasion check. I figured he's from a noble family. The merchant has possibly heard of them and knows they're good for it, so I'll give him a chance. What would have been funnier is if he actually rolled a nat 20, but he didn't. He did roll high enough to beat DC, so this merchant looks at him and is like, "Yeah, okay," and gives her the armor on an IOU, basically saying that if he doesn't get his gold, he'll send people after them. The tiefling basically looks at him like he's crazy and says that he'd been laughed out of the shop if it were her father. So yeah, that's how our tiefling got a suit of plate armor, because I was entirely too generous to our rogue. Our rogue's player is a nice, reasonable guy who didn't really think I let him do that, so he said he'd never do that kind of thing again, and I said I'd never let him do it again. It's not the dumbest you'll find on this one, but it's one of our favorite moments as a group because of how ridiculous it was. And because I was more generous than I had to be, the rogue's player, who also happens to DM the other campaign we're running, gave my character in that campaign, a drow ranger who favors archery, a quiver of infinite arrows. What a nice touch. Hey everyone, Brian Vaughn VA here, wishing you well and hoping you liked today's video. If you did, please give us a big fat thumbs up, and if you're new here, we encourage you to roll your d20 and use your bonus action to give us a subscribe too. And make sure to follow MrRipper on his Twitter, and not only join his subreddit r/MrRipper, but check out his brand new Safe for Work Discord group that isn't a dumpster fire. Links are all in the description below. Using your help action, you can also check me out on YouTube or Twitter, and even join my Discord, which will all be linked down there too. Today I had a little bit of a special positive message planned for everybody out there who are making friends in my Discord and in MrRipper's as well. We've been working very hard for so long individually on making happy and safe environments where people around the world can just come together, nerd out, and make lasting friendships with other D&D nerds. Both Ripper and I value the idea of making friendships online, and for me personally, especially in these trying times where you can't do it in person, it's all the more valuable to do so in a safe place. So we hope you guys and gals out there can enjoy plenty of games together, and that it takes away as much pain, suffering, and anxiety as possible, especially given we know the school season is coming too. So please, check us both out, make some new friends, be nice to one another, and be nice to yourselves too, as y'all deserve it. All the love, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.